My goodness, it is a beautiful spring day here in the Midwest, and we've got 3 or 4 more lined up, and life is good. I'm starting the video just a minute or so early in anticipation of some people showing up, and hopefully we'll have a crowd as we once again pick up where we left off with the book Course in Miracles. And welcome to another introduction to A Course in Miracles. And this evening we've got some really juicy stuff, so I am hoping a few people show up and join me as we delve a little bit more deeply into the Course each week. And today we are going to start off with a lesson, and the lesson for today, for those of you who are doing the daily lessons, is number 136. So we've got 136 days of looking at A Course in Miracles, doing the workbook. And this particular lesson is one that I think is very timely, in that we're moving out of winter into spring and summer, and different things flare up, allergies and all these other illnesses that are seasonal. And of course, the advance of time means the ongoing deterioration of the body. No matter how much effort we put into it, it seems like it is a never-ending journey into oblivion. So that's why we're involved in A Course in Miracles. And this particular lesson reads, "Sickness is a defense against the truth. No one can heal unless he understands what purpose sickness seems to serve. For then he understands as well its purpose has no meaning. Being causeless and without a meaningful intent of any kind, it cannot be at all. When this is seen, healing is automatic. It dispels this meaningless illusion by the same approach that carries all of them to truth and merely leaves them there to disappear." Well, what are we talking about here? Sickness, once you recognize the truth and embrace the truth, will self-correct, is basically what we're being told. And there have been literally hundreds, if not thousands, of practitioners who have received the truth for themselves, which is that process that we refer to as the atonement, the rejoining of man and God, the reunion of man as a spiritual being with God as a spiritual being. And all of these practitioners across the sands of time have used that one technique of accepting 100% the truth of their identity. They are spirit, not physical being, and within that they could extend that truth to all around them who are willing to be healed. And there has to be a willingness on behalf of the individual who is looking for a healing, so that when you do make that connection with the right person, and fate will bring you to that person if you ask the Holy Spirit, if you ask the Christ within you, if you ask Jesus, your path will cross the path of some individual who can help you lift yourself up and make that next step. And that's healing the ills of the physical body. And just to share a story that for me was an amazing experience that I had when I was much, much younger. Back in 1971, I was along the Michigan, or the Wisconsin coast. I was traveling back and forth between Door County and Chicago and Milwaukee and Waukesha. And I had had some issues that came up. And I had always had an inclination to go for spiritual healing, just instinctively. It was something that just seemed right from my early childhood even. I was not a person who tended to go to doctors with a lot of comfort or ease. But anyway, I had contacted a Christian Science practitioner, and I went to her office. She was in her mid-30s, and she kind of gave me a rundown as to, you know, the conditions and circumstances of her life. She was a performer. She sang opera, and she married in her early 20s, and she and her husband had tried on multiple occasions to have children, and it never happened. And doctors told her that this would endanger her life, having a child, and that she shouldn't even attempt it. Well, she went on to become completely immersed in Christian Science and in the more mystical aspect of Christian Science, because like with all religions, with all organizations, you have the surface level, and then you have varying degrees of depth of recognition and understanding. And she was a very good student and ended up having 2 daughters, natural childbirth in her home. And that was kind of her launch in her mid-20s into becoming a practitioner. And when I caught up with her, she was a very profound person to dialogue with and to interact with. So I remember sitting across from her in her office, and she closed her eyes, and all of a sudden I felt like I was being drawn down into my physical body. And then there was kind of a sense of an expanse opening up, and it seemed like the world was bigger. And as she went deeper into her own experience, the air around me literally started to dance with these little magical sparks. And it was really quite a remarkable experience, because, you know, we're often told by a multitude of people not to look for physicality in our spiritual experiences. But the fact that this woman had taken me with her into a different realm of existence and introduced me to a different level of conscious awareness, I think was a very, very powerful reinforcement for my own journey into working my way through spiritual healing and working my way through reaching out to others and supporting others and assisting all of us to get back to that higher place that is normal for us, that is home. So nonetheless, I did have minor shifts as far as the healing, but over the course of time, as my resistance to healing began to dissolve, I got more and more and more into my healing process. And so it may have taken, 10 years for that entire journey to unfold, but that contact point with her was very, very profound. And that was where I first began to comprehend that I had resistance to healing. And that is what this lesson is about. Sickness is a defense against the truth. As it goes on to say, sickness is not an accident. Like all defenses, it is an insane device for self-deception. And like all the rest, its purpose is to hide reality, attack it, change it, render it inept, distort it, twist it, or reduce it to a little pile of unassembled parts. And this is, the natural inclination of the ego. We fractionate life. We chop things up as much as we can in the belief that by dissecting life, we can comprehend it. And of course, that's absurd. It's when you begin to embrace the totality of life that you begin to comprehend what life is. It finishes up saying, the aim of all defenses is to keep the truth from being whole. The parts are seen as if each one were whole within itself. And, you know, when we go to the doctor, what do? They take all these tests, they separate the body. They try to take the body and turn it into all of these different individual functions that are isolated and separated from each other. That in itself is a giveaway. You know, you have to look at the entire organism in order to comprehend what's going on with the body. And as you grow into a deeper level of awareness, you begin to realize that the body is simply an outpicturing of what's going on within the mind. So with that thought in mind, if the mind perceives itself as being whole, then your body will reflect that oneness, that unity. And from there will be, the next step that opens up, which is being able to look at illusion and confront it and to cast it out. That was that was one of the stories in the New Testament where Jesus encounters this man who is possessed by demons, and Jesus confronts them. He just he doesn't attack them, but he does confront them. And by demons, I have always interpreted that as erroneous thoughts that are not based in truth, thoughts that are not based on God's love, on God's understanding, on comprehension of who God is and what God is. And if you'll remember, Jesus cast them into a herd of swine, and the swine went running off across the plains and ran off a cliff and died. That's kind of a grisly story, but there's a certain amount of dramatic necessity that the people who put the New Testament as well as the Old Testament and most other sacred texts together, there's this need to, if not embellish, at least put a lot of dramatic effects into the stories we're being told. But nonetheless, Jesus approached it from confronting these erroneous ideas that this person had about himself. I'm an idiot, I'm horrible, and I am this and I am that. And Jesus was able to separate that person from those thoughts that were erroneous. And in order to make the story interesting, he throws the thoughts into a herd of swine. I don't know if pigs were being sacrificed back then and it was an actual reality, or if it's simply a way of helping us to comprehend that the negative thoughts, and not just negative, I shouldn't misstate that. It's not a matter of negativity, but the erroneous thoughts, the thoughts about I am human, I am separate, I am vulnerable, I am angry, I am hurt, I am in pain. All of those individual thoughts are contributing to whatever ill situations you have going on within your physical body. So this lesson for today puts a whole new spin on health and helps us to comprehend that as we aspire to heal the mind, the body is going to be dragged along behind. It's going to be dragged with you. So you cannot go through these processes of healing the mind without seeing manifestations occurring within the body. And again, the Course occasionally points out that it's not appropriate to have the expectation of seeing a manifestation in physical form once you have experienced a healing. But nonetheless, it will catch up with you at some point in time. And as I mentioned in my story earlier, for me, it took 10 years for the full process to complete itself. So even though there may not be a physical manifestation in the immediate moment, a year down the line, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years down the road, there will be that recognition that, oh, you know, that hangnail, that issue that I've been dealing with for 5 years or 10 years or whatever, it's gone. It's very magical. The truth is, at some point, a part of you accepted the truth about your identity. You accepted the idea that you are a spiritual being and that you have a physical body that you've attached yourself to, but you are not that body. And in proportion to your settling into that truth over a period of weeks, days, or years, you will see that truth reflected within the flesh. So what an amazing process the Course offers us. And it's so simple, and yet you can find healers in virtually every spiritual culture that have come along and accepted healing for themselves and then extended that healing to those around them. And, you know, we have Mary Baker Eddy in Christian tradition, and Phineas Quimby, and Joel Goldsmith, and Ernest Holmes. I mean, there's one name after another that you can pull up, and you can find that in some of the Sufi mystics in Islam. You can find it in Hinduism and Buddhism. I mean, in all of the different disciplines, you can find these healers who have taken that next step and accepted the healing for themselves. So that's what this whole lesson is based on. Who but yourself evaluates a threat, decides escape is necessary, and sets up a series of defenses to reduce the threat that has been judged as real. All this cannot be done unconsciously. So we're always, even though we delude ourselves into believing that we're not actually doing these things, the truth is, if you're totally transparent and honest with yourself, you will observe these little glimpses of this deeper process going on within the mind, where you're setting yourself up to be defeated. You're setting yourself up to be ill. You're setting yourself up to be impoverished. You're setting yourself up to be reduced by separation to the smallest possible sense of self you can conceive of. But afterwards, your plan requires that you must forget you made it. So it seems to be external to your own intent, a happening beyond your state of mind, an outcome with a real effect on you, instead of one affected by yourself. And this is the game we play. This is the way we set ourselves up to be the victim of the world that we imagine that we're seeing. And the world that we imagine that we're seeing is an outward projection of what we're thinking. So it becomes a very nefarious adventure. You know, it's like a dervish dance, but instead of spiraling upward and expanding into infinity, we are spiraling inward and going down, 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 and reducing ourselves to as much nothingness as we can possibly tolerate. So it is a very unfortunate journey that a lot of people have decided to make. And in proportion to your willingness to be honest with yourself about, why did I set myself up for this journey in this life? The doors will open, the resources will become available, and you will be led to all the right experiences to help alleviate the sense of imprisonment that you have created for yourself. So the final section here I'll read goes on to say, sickness is a decision. I know a lot of you get all hysterical about things like this. Oh no, I got cancer. Oh no, I got this, I got that. Well, I've been through those things. I've been through the appendectomy that I ignored for 4 days, and I was jaundiced so bad that I was glowing in the dark with a bright yellow tint. So we do set ourselves up to be a victim, and we claim it. We really hold on to it, you know. And Jesus comes along and tries to pry it out of our hands, and we resist. We kick and we fight and we howl and we scream. But at some point, you know, it's like that ultimate illusion. The guy's laying face down in 4 feet of water, turning his head to the side, screaming, I'm drowning, I'm drowning, somebody help me. And somebody comes along and taps him on the shoulder and says, stand up, you know. You're not drowning. You're just making yourself hysterical, and you're making yourself a victim. That's the way most approach life, unless we have come into this life somewhat awakened. You know, the victim role is something that very, very, very powerful, and a lot of people really like to hold on to it. So anyway, this paragraph goes on to say, it is a choice you make, a plan you lay, when for an instant truth arises in your own deluded mind, and all your world appears to totter and prepare to fall. Now are you sick, that truth may go away and threaten your establishments no more. So frequently when we are manifesting illnesses, it's because we have had a close encounter with some deeper truth. And the illness comes up as a way of our scaring ourselves back into being the numb and the dumb. The numb and the dumb. You know, America used to be, or at least I thought it used to be, a nation of somewhat awakened individuals. The last 10 years has definitely caused me to realize how much I had deluded myself about that one too. But nonetheless, we do have a culture that supports tragedy and hostility and separation and paranoia and fear, and I could just go on and on and on. And we're not going to change it by getting out there and rioting in the streets. We're going to change it by doing the work we need to do about identity and getting our own identity clarified, and then sharing that identity wherever we go. And I don't mean pulling out, you know, a soapbox and preaching on street corners, but by overlooking the nastiness in the world, by forgiving the unfortunate circumstances we encounter, and by replacing fear and anger and frustration with love. That's how we will change this world. It's not going to happen any other way. You know, we've got thousands of years of history of man struggling to straighten out this world. And it's the same cycle repeated over and over and over again. Go back and look at what was going on in Rome, you know, in the era of Caligula. Very much like what's going on in America in this current era. So we have to be truthful. We have to be honest with ourselves. Our work starts first in here with ourselves, and then we go out into the world and we have the effect of being like a virus. We have the effect of contaminating this world and watching that contamination spread. You know, what a beautiful thought, a contamination of love. How about that for changing words with negative connotations into words that have a positive spin? So become your own contamination unto this world. Stop and surrender to love as often as you can. And when the lesson comes around a second time and you're seeing the same circumstances with different faces, that means you weren't fully willing to forgive and release. So again, it's a journey of repetition, and it is a spiral. It is dancing in a spiral that ever expands and ever ascends. That's how we change the world. So anyway, that's the lesson for today. I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed it. And we're going to pick up in the daily text. Where are we picking up? We are looking at chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness. And we're looking at section 6, Time and Eternity. God in his knowledge is not waiting, but his kingdom is bereft while you wait. All the sons of God are waiting for your return, just as you are waiting for theirs. Delay does not matter in eternity, but it is tragic in time. You have elected to be in time rather than eternity, and therefore believe you are in time. Yet your election is both free and alterable. You do not belong in time. Your place is only in eternity, where God himself placed you forever. And this is an interesting little blip here, because again, when we are identified with our ego, we are identified with smallness, with restriction, with various things that cripple us, that maim us, that hold us back. And yet, when we begin to have just a glimmer of awakening, we suddenly encounter ideas that the ego really, really, really is not happy with. And that the primary concept that is reiterated throughout the course is that God itself is incomplete without you. So what does that make you? That makes you a player in a field of perfection. And it goes beyond any concept of self-worth that we might entertain, to realize that we are God's perfect creation, and that we do, in fact, dwell within God, even though we've elected to dumb ourselves down with this physical dream. The truth is that there are not even words to describe the beauty of who you are. Stop and ponder that. All of the people out there running around needing to have a new car to feel good about themselves, needing to have a 10,000 square foot house, or to have a showy travel experience going around the world, you know, all of these people are feeling incomplete and bereft of that sense of wholeness. You can, within your life, get such a deep assurance of the truth of who you are that it will empower you through the rest of your life in this physical form and beyond that. The entire cosmos, all of creation, is feeling the lack of your presence while you're continuing to exist in the dream, while you're continuing to resist that experience of the atonement. Every time you step into that state of silence and enter into the atonement and give allowance for that reconnection with God, you are, in fact, making a fractured universe complete. What an incredible statement about your worth. So, you know, if you're out there competing, trying to dress properly, trying to make your body look good, trying to, you know, show up at the right place at the right time, 2 steps ahead of the paparazzi, hanging out with all those impressive friends, dropping names, doing all this bullshit. The truth is, you are not understanding who you are. You are a perfect creation by a perfect creator, and your value lies so far beyond any concept this world has of value that the only thing that you can do is to just surrender that ego, just drop it. And all of a sudden, your sense of worth will well up inside you, and you will begin to realize how important you are and how perfect your function is in this realm to help others awaken to that same truth. So, you know, it's pretty intense. It's pretty deep. It's a joy that cannot even be communicated. You know, I'm doing my best to help you recognize how all these deeper feelings can leave an effect within your mind, within your consciousness, and within your life itself, so that as you're out there moving through the world, you are expressing this truth, and within that, being a contamination, you are going to be the virus that contaminates the world with love. And love of self, really, in truth, is the love of every person you encounter, because we are, in fact, all part of one creation. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this week's lesson. I had a great time chatting it up with you. I'll be back in 1 week. We'll look at some more lessons. But remember, you know, if you've got something that's bugging you, if you've got an illness, if you've got a heartache, if you've got a sorrow, you can let go of it. You can embrace your truth. You can come to a quiet place, and you can astonish yourself with the power that you inherited. You are like that grain of mustard seed. You have to see the truth, that you are a creation of the divine, and that there is nothing that can hold you down or back. But it all comes from letting go of the ego. So anyway, get out there, share the love, pass the love around. Check out my website, www.themiraclewithin.org. And in 1 week, we'll reconvene. Send me any thoughts or ideas, you know, to my Facebook page or to my email address on the website. Let me know if these ideas are starting to stir up something within the depths of who you believe yourself to be. And if you're getting a little bit shaken up here and there with ideas of grandeur, because those are the right ideas to have about yourself. You are, in your truth, the grandeur of God. But once you step back into that ego, then you're stepping back into grandiosity, and you're almost trying to impress everybody around you. You don't need to do that. So get out there, share the love, pass love around, and we will speak in 7 days. Have a great week.